My son proudly exclaimed, "You will never compare to my father-in-law." His words struck me like a knife. The perfect father-in-law versus a simple father who had silently supported the family for years. I stood up and replied, "Will he pay your bills? Because I'm not sending you any more money." My son's wife was shocked. "What money? We haven't received a cent from you." What I found out next shocked me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. The fork trembled in my hand as Daniel's laughter filled the dining room. Rain drummed against the windows, but the storm outside felt gentle compared to what was brewing at my own table. "Edward always knows exactly what to do," Cora said, cutting her chicken with precise movements. "When that shipping delay happened last month, he had it solved in 2 phone calls." I watched my son nod eagerly, his eyes bright with admiration for his father-in-law. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked steadily, marking time I'd never get back. "That's the difference between real business vision," and Daniel gestured vaguely around my dining room, taking in the wooden furniture I'd built with my own hands, the family photos watching from their frames. His meaning hung in the air like smoke. "And what?" The words came out sharper than I intended. Cora glanced between us, sensing the shift. "Arnold, the dinner is wonderful. Thank you for cooking." But Daniel was already warming to his theme. "Edward sees the big picture. He doesn't get stuck thinking small. He speared a piece of potato, like this logistics expansion he's planning. That's how you really help people." My jaw tightened. The green beans I'd carefully steamed suddenly tasted like ash. I'd spent 3 hours preparing this meal, hoping for one evening of family peace. "Your father works hard too," Cora said softly, but her tone carried the same unconscious dismissal I'd been hearing for months. "Sure, but construction." Daniel shrugged. "Edward's building an empire, real legacy stuff." The napkin crumpled in my grip. 37 years of building homes, creating something permanent, something that mattered. Apparently that was nothing compared to moving boxes around warehouses. "Edward offered me the regional manager position," Daniel continued, his chest puffing with borrowed pride. "Says I have natural leadership potential." Natural leadership. I almost laughed. If only Edward knew where Daniel's potential had led him. "That's wonderful, honey." Cora beamed at her husband. "Your father always knows how to spot talent. Always knows, always sees, always solves. Edward Wilson, the perfect father-in-law who could do no wrong." I set down my fork carefully, afraid I might snap it in half. "He's even talking about grooming me for a partnership eventually," Daniel went on. "Says he needs someone he can trust completely." Trust completely? The irony burned in my throat. "Must be nice having someone who believes in you that much," I said quietly. Daniel missed the edge in my voice entirely. "That's just Edward. He's a natural mentor. Some people have it, some don't." The clock ticked louder. Rain pattered against glass. Somewhere in the house, the heating system hummed to life, trying to warm what had gone cold. "He's teaching me about strategic thinking," Daniel continued. "Long-term planning, real business philosophy." "Real business," I repeated. "You know what I mean, Dad. Edward operates on a different level." "Bother what? He thinks bigger." Cora nodded enthusiastically. "Remember when he restructured that whole Northwest division? Brilliant, brilliant. Edward. Perfect Edward. Edward who could solve anything, see everything, build empires, while I apparently played with blocks." "Some people just have that executive mindset," Daniel said, leaning back in his chair like he was already practicing for the boardroom. "The ability to make tough decisions, to really lead, unlike others," I said. "Well," Daniel shrugged, his meaning clear. The silence stretched tight as a wire. Even Cora seemed to sense she'd wandered into dangerous territory. But Daniel, flushed with his father-in-law's praise and his own imagined importance, couldn't leave it alone. "Face it, Dad," he said, his voice growing louder, more confident. "You'll never measure up to my father-in-law." The words hit like a physical blow. I stood slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. I had installed myself. Every muscle in my body went rigid. Daniel sat there triumphant and oblivious, while Cora's face went pale with shock. The rain kept falling, the clock kept ticking, and something inside me went very, very cold. I stood there gripping the back of my chair as Daniel's words echoed in my mind. "You'll never measure up." The phrase triggered something deeper, pulling me into memories I'd tried to keep buried 2 years ago. Daniel sitting across from my desk in the home office, his hands clasped tightly, eyes avoiding mine. "Dad, we just need to get through this month." His voice had been smaller then, embarrassed. There was this unexpected expense with the apartment, and my paycheck got delayed. I'd written the check for $2,000 without hesitation. My son needed help. That's what fathers did. "This is temporary," he'd promised, folding the check carefully, "just until I get back on my feet." 3 months later, he was back. This time it was car repairs and utilities. $3,000. His stories were getting more elaborate, his explanations more desperate. "Cora doesn't know how tight things are," he'd whispered that time. "I don't want to worry her. You understand, right, Manto Man?" I understood. I understood that my son was struggling, and too proud to let his wife see it. So, I opened my checkbook again. By the fourth visit, it had become routine. Daniel would call first, testing the waters. "Hey Dad, could we talk sometime this week?" Then he'd show up with another crisis, another emergency that only money could solve. I started keeping better records, not because I didn't trust him, but because the amounts were getting larger. 2,500, 1 month, 3,200, the next. I wanted to track it all, maybe help him see the pattern, figure out where the money was actually going. The online banking made it easier. No more checks, no more paper trail. He might accidentally leave where Cora could find it. Just quiet transfers from my business account to his personal account every month like clockwork. Edward's helping with career stuff, Daniel had explained during one of our last conversations. But we need cash flow help until the new position kicks in. Edward was helping with career stuff. I was helping with everything else. $75,000 over 3 years. I knew the exact number because I'd calculated it just last week, sitting in that same office, staring at the bank statements spread across my desk. $75,000 of my sweat, my labor, my careful savings. Money I'd earned hauling lumber, and mixing concrete, and working 14-hour days to build something lasting. All of it disappeared into whatever black hole Daniel called his temporary setbacks. The last transfer had been just 3 weeks ago, $2,800, because his rent had gone up, and there was some issue with his health insurance. Another emergency. Another promise that this was the last time. "I really appreciate this, Dad," he'd said over the phone. "I know you don't have to do this. Family helps family, right? Family helps family." I blinked, returning to the present moment. Daniel was still sitting there, still glowing with his father-in-law's approval, still completely unaware that his perfect world was about to come crashing down. Cora was staring at me with concern. "Arnold, are you all right?" The rain outside seemed louder now, more insistent. The warm light from the dining room chandelier felt harsh against my eyes. Everything looked different, sharper, like I was seeing it all for the first time. 25 payments, $75,000, 3 years of being the silent bank, while Edward got all the credit for being the generous mentor. My grip tightened on the chair back. All those months of careful planning, of budgeting my own expenses so I could help my son. All those times I'd chosen not to buy something I wanted because Daniel needed help more than I needed comfort. And this was my thanks. This dismissal, this casual cruelty. I looked at Daniel's face, still flushed with borrowed pride, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. The hurt was still there, but underneath it was something harder, colder. "You'll never measure up. We'd see about that." I straightened slowly, letting the weight of 3 years settle into my bones. The rain hammered against the windows now, demanding attention. Daniel sat there, satisfied with his little speech, while Cora watched me with growing concern. "You think Edward will take care of you?" My voice came out steady, controlled, deadly quiet. Daniel blinked, some of his smugness faltering. "What's that supposed to mean?" Simple question. I walked around the table, my footsteps deliberate on the hardwood. "When Edward stops being useful to you, when the job doesn't work out the way you planned, who's going to pay your bills?" "Dad, what are you talking about?" "Because I won't be sending you money anymore." The words landed like a sledgehammer. Daniel's face went white, then red, then white again. Cora's fork clattered against her plate. "What money?" Cora's voice cracked with confusion. "We haven't received a penny from you." The silence that followed was beautiful, Daniel's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The grandfather clock ticked louder, marking each second of his panic. Daniel, Cora turned to her husband, her brow furrowed. What's he talking about? Daniel's hands were shaking now. It's not what you think. What's not what I think? Cora's voice rose sharply. Arnold just said he's been sending us money. What money, Daniel? I crossed my arms and waited. This was delicious. 3 years of careful lies were about to unravel, in the span of minutes. There might have been some small temporary. Daniel stammered. How much? Cora demanded. Daniel looked at me desperately, silently, begging me to let it go, to preserve whatever dignity he had left. The same look he'd given me as a child, when he'd broken something and hoped I wouldn't tell his mother. $75,000, I said calmly. Cora's gasp echoed through the room. 75, what? Over 3 years, monthly payments, sometimes more when he had special emergencies. I kept my voice conversational, like I was discussing the weather, car repairs, rent increases, utility bills, medical expenses, always something. Daniel Cora's voice had gone deadly quiet. Is this true? Daniel's face crumpled. Cora, I can't explain. $75,000. She stood up slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. While I've been worried sick about our finances, while I've been taking extra shifts and cutting back on everything, it wasn't supposed to be that much. Daniel whispered. Where did it go? The question came from both of us simultaneously. Cora and I stared at Daniel, waiting for an answer we both suddenly desperately needed. Daniel's mouth worked soundlessly. Sweat beaded on his forehead, despite the cool evening air. He looked around the room, as if searching for an escape route, but there was nowhere to run. Daniel, Cora's voice was ice. Where did the money go? Outside, lightning flashed, illuminating the dining room in stark white light for just a moment. In that flash, I saw everything clearly. My son's terror, my daughter-in-law's betrayal, and my own cold satisfaction. The thunder that followed seemed to shake the house. Daniel opened his mouth to speak, and I leaned forward, eager to hear what lie he'd try next. But more than that, I was eager to watch it all fall apart, because this was just the beginning. I can explain. Daniel's voice cracked like a teenager's. Cora leaned forward, her knuckles white against the table edge. Then explain. Where did $75,000 go? The silence stretched until even the grandfather clock seemed to hesitate. Daniel's mouth opened and closed several times before any sound emerged. It's complicated. No.